The National Registry named it as a great American film this year. Even I'm appalled at that.
Hey, what's going on? Thanks for tuning into Chicago Humanities Tapes, the audio arm of the live Chicago Humanities Spring and Fall Festivals. Twice a year, we pack our calendars with the best speakers from across the arts, technology, literature, and politics. People like Rachel Maddow, Bob Odenkirk, Michio Kaku, all giving you expert insights on what's affecting our lives. Head to chicagohumanities.org for more info and to see if any of your favorite speakers are currently in town. I'm Elisa Rosenthal, and I'm on a quest to dig through our 30-plus year archive to find the answers to humanity's biggest questions. Today, what can we learn about life from comedies? Here are two glass-half-full kind of guys breaking down their careers and sharing behind-the-scenes stories along the way. We're really straddling the comedy history spectrum today, giving you a well-rounded comedy education from two titans of directing, Harold Ramis, who knows subversion, and John Waters, who is subversion. So speaking of, the only content warnings I have for you is that Harold Ramis is so wholesome, it might just make you unexpectedly cry on your commute. And the John Waters program in the second half is one of the most crass things I've ever heard. So, we've got some highbrow and some lowbrow for you today. That's comedy, baby! Up first, Harold Ramis. You know him as Egon from Ghostbusters, which he also co-wrote, and the director of such blockbusters as Caddyshack, Stripes, and one of my favorite movies, Groundhog Day. Born in Chicago, and like actually Chicago, go send high school Bulldogs, he couldn't be more beloved in the Chicago community. The Second City originally named their comedy film program the Harold Ramis Film School in his honor. The former joke editor at Playboy, he then moved on to writing and performing for the National Lampoon Radio Hour, SCTV, co-wrote Animal House, and the rest is history. As Barack Obama said of him, "When we watched his movies, we didn't just laugh until it hurt. We questioned authority. We identified with the outsider, we rooted for the underdog, and through it all, we never lost our faith in happy endings." We unfortunately lost Ramis in 2014 to complications from an autoimmune disease at just the age of 69. We're so lucky to have this comic lecture from 2009 of his favorite funny moments in film to get inside his comedic genius head and get to know more about him as the big film-loving kid he always was.
All right, that's good enough. Thank you. I have here a list of the 100 funniest movies of the last 100 years from AFI. And as Avi said, I have 4% of those movies. I'm thinking back to 1944 when I was born, and I'm old enough to remember a time before television when the family sat around and actually listened to radio. And I was around for the real beginnings of television. When all of America watched the same shows, and most of everyone's favorite shows were the comedies, Milton Berle and Jackie Gleason and Sid Caesar and the Show of Shows. Later, the Steve Allen Show, I Love Lucy, all that stuff kind of entered the American consciousness, and mostly it was extensions of vaudeville and older theatrical forms. Ernie Kovacs came along and started doing some real original, kind of surreal television. But for me, what was really engrossing in television were the movies that were recycled on TV. Hollywood and TV were at war. Hollywood would not license contemporary films to television. So all television could do was recycle really old stuff. So if you were a kid watching TV in the 50s, you saw all of silent comedy. From Chaplin to Max Sennett and the Keystone Cops, Laurel and Hardy, Harold Lloyd, Buster Keaton. That was what I grew up on. So being the grandson of immigrants, Jewish immigrants, and working class, and lower middle class, middle class on a good day, I kind of really I identified most strongly with the Marx Brothers. My father had a very dry kind of Groucho Marx sense of humor. His brothers weren't funny, but they were kind of my comic ideals, and those are the movies that really made me laugh the most. Wit, anarchy, and the triumph of the common man over the pretensions and prejudices of the ruling power elite. The Marx Brothers, Groucho, Chico, Harpo, and Carl. That's what I got. That's what I got from the Marx Brothers. It was a great lesson in comedy and an actual political point of view. I also love the screwball comedies of Howard Hawks, Bringing Up Babies, Girl Friday, other films like The Thin Man, My Man Godfrey, Ninotchka, The Philadelphia Story, and of course Frank Capra's feel-good films, Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and It's a Wonderful Life, of course. But Capra also could do screwball comedy. It Happened One Night is a classic, and one of my favorites was Arsenic and Old Lace. I loved Cary Grant. My great movie heroes were Cary Grant and Errol Flynn. I wanted to be both. And I also wanted to be Groucho and Harpo. So those were my kind of role models. My father was way too lazy to be any kind of role model. He just sat in a chair, tossed off one-liners, and kind of laughed. But these were screwball comedies, fast-talking, witty, and sophisticated, great writing, wonderful acting. Film comedy in the 50s for me was Jerry Lewis and Danny Kaye. And then as we got toward the 60s, great Billy Wilder comedies, Some Like It Hot in the Apartment. On TV, Dobie Gillis. In print, Max Schulman and Mad Magazine. And then I went to college in 62. 62 was a kind of watershed year to be going to college. I told people when I went away to college, I'd look like John Kennedy. By the end of college, I'd look like John Lennon. And I had politics like Nikolai Lenin. But after the Cuban Missile Crisis in 62 and then the Kennedy assassination, comedy was a little hard to come by through the mid-60s. But a couple of Sid Caesar's writers were keeping it alive. And by my senior year, I discovered Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks' 2,000-Year-Old Man. Almost everyone I know in comedy who grew up at that time listened to this material. I've worked with Billy Crystal a couple of times. He can quote any line from Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks. Same with Paul Reiser. We did a pilot for CBS, and Paul, he and I would all day we would just trade Mel Brooks lines. I started acting in college, serious acting. I'd always been performing. I started performing music when I was 13 years old, playing the guitar and singing. Went to the Old Town School of Folk Music starting in 1960. Okay. And did skits and shows, musical skits and shows. But in college, I was in my first serious play, Oedipus Rex. I was cast as the priest of Zeus. I opened the play with a 2.5-minute speech, then disappeared, did not appear in the rest of the play. But I stayed in makeup and costume for the rest of the play, so I could take a bow at the end 2.5 hours later. But we rehearsed the play a lot. We had a dress rehearsal, and there was no curtain. It was a proscenium stage, but they had built the stage in levels. There were stairways leading up to the temple of Zeus. And at the beginning of the play, the lights would come up, and I'd be kneeling at the doors of the temple, and then turn and give my speech. Well, opening night came, and they called places. Lights went out, and I realized something was terribly different. We had always rehearsed the play with a light on, so we could find our places on stage. On opening night, there were no lights. It was pitch black. So in the dark, you could hear the actors stumbling out on stage, like tripping over the scenery, clunk, 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 and I thought, oh my God, I gotta find my spot in the dark. So I was careful not to fall. I worked my way up. I got to the top level. I got down on my knees, felt the wall, got down on my knees, and prayed that I was in front of the doors where I was supposed to be. The lights came up, and I was not. I was facing a blank wall about 5 feet from where I was supposed to be. So on my knees, I started shuffling across to where I was supposed to be. While Carl and Mel were pursuing their insane Yiddish sensibility in the late 50s and early 60s, something was happening at the University of Chicago that really would change American comedy forever. Mike Nichols and Elaine May, the Compass and the Second City as an extension of the Compass, they were exploring things that had not really been talked about in American comedy. There was a heavy Freudian kind of influence. Existentialism was the key word, the coffee house and sensibility, the Beat Generation, finally found a comic voice. And when I first heard Mike Nichols and Elaine May, I thought, yeah, that's good. That's something I would like to emulate somehow. Meanwhile, in England, another school of comedy was developing. First, it was Peter Sellers and Spike Milligan. They did the Goon Show in England. they had a big influence on what became the establishment. I forgot if they were at Oxford or Cambridge. But it was Peter Cook and Dudley Moore and Alan Bennett and Jonathan Miller. And they were doing a British form of what was happening at the Compass in Second City with a different cultural flavor. But they shared something, which Bernie Sahlins always expressed to me as always work from the top of your intelligence. And he always mentioned, let's raise the level of reference. The British comedies of the 50s and 60s were very appealing to me. It was always Peter Sellers and Alec Guinness and Alistair Sim, Kind Hearts and Coronets, Lady Killers, Man in a Cocked Hat, Lavender Hill Mob, Green Man, Man in the White Suit, Captain's Paradise, I'm All Right, Jack. And then, Sellers finally teamed up with Terry Southern, writer Terry Southern and the director Stanley Kubrick, made one of the great comedies of all time. Dr. Strangelove. Sellers, of course, plays 3 parts in the movie. Anyway, so Peter Sellers was kind of really great and the first person to really break out of the new British comedy tradition. But then I started hearing about Peter Cook and Dudley Moore. They had a popular show on the BBC, not only, but also. And then the stage shows Beyond the Fringe and the sequel to that, Behind the Fridge. And British comedy was very smart. It just seemed so smart. I had been an editor at Playboy magazine, and when I went to London for the first time in 1971, and I was told to look up Victor Lowndes, who was a Playboy executive, ran the European operation for Playboy. I went to his house in Connaught Square, which was known as kind of the London Playboy mansion. And Victor knew I had done a little Second City before I got there, and he said, what do you think of Monty Python? And I said, who? And who's Monty Python? He said, it's not a person, it's a group. So when I got back to the States after Victor had told me about Monty Python, PBS started licensing the BBC shows, Monty Python's Flying Circus. I always think of Monty Python as the first postmodern comedy, because they drew from everything, from every period in history. Their costume pieces are great. It's very literate, it's very silly, it's physically funny, it's witty, it had it all for me, and kind of raised the bar a little bit, I thought. Now, my own work, for me, pales by comparison, but a lot of my early stuff was pretty well received. So I brought something from Caddyshack. Caddyshack was it wasn't intended this way. It started out as a coming-of-age story. We were going to tell the story of a young caddy. In the process, hired Chevy Chase and Rodney Dangerfield and Billy Murray, and ended up, there was this kind of an incredible magnetism to those characters. The movie shifted away from the ingenue story and really ended up being their film. And I realized as I was doing it, it's like a Marx Brothers movie. Rodney's like Groucho, Bill is like Harpo, Chevy's the Chico in that formula, and Ted Knight was like the Sig Ruman, the stuffy upper class guy. So I went with that and thought, all right, the ingenue story in those Marx Brothers films, it hardly mattered. It was nice. The young couple gets together at the end, fine. No one really cared. They just were there to see the Marx Brothers. And in Caddyshack, it's Rodney, Bill, and Chevy that steal the film. Many years later, my wife, for her 50th birthday, she had a lot of connection to Buddhism. My mother-in-law had lived for over 30 years in a Buddhist meditation center. My wife spent her 4 college years in a Buddhist meditation center. So for her 50th birthday, she said, I want to meet the Dalai Lama. So we had some friends in Glencoe who knew His Holiness. They said, oh yeah, that can be arranged. We went to Washington, D.C., we went to a big public talk, we went to a smaller private dinner, and in the afternoon, our friends said, all right, His Holiness can see you for a couple minutes, maybe, he's got to go up to Capitol Hill to speak to Congress. So we went into his suite at the Four Seasons, of course, and his scheduling secretary was like really nervous because you got to get up there, and Sierra Club's waiting and congressmen are waiting, and the Dalai Lama, he looked at us and he said, "Sit down, please." So we sat down with him. We talked for a few minutes. I told him I was a filmmaker. Then he dropped Richard Gere's name on me. All right. He said, as I said to Richard Gere, you have a great opportunity to speak to people about compassion. All right, great. So, a couple more years go by, Dalai Lama came to Chicago. My wife and I were asked to executive produce the stage performance that preceded his appearance and set the stage for him. We designed the backdrop, the painted backdrops, and great experience. Again, we got to meet with him at the Palmer House. But this time, the Buddhists were high-level monks and parts of his entourage were coming up to me and saying, "What is Caddyshack?" And Caddyshack's a golf movie, and they said, "The Dalai Lama is talked about in this movie?" I said, "Yes, he is, kind of, you know." I guess he hasn't seen it, you know. And they were interested, but I said to the Dalai Lama, "Watch movies." I wasn't going to send him Caddyshack, of course. I thought maybe he'd seen Groundhog Day, because all the Buddhists really had embraced Groundhog Day. And they said, "No, His Holiness likes nature films. His last film he saw was March of the Penguins." I thought, all right. He's not going to be watching Meatballs, I thought. All right. I did a kind of screwball comedy farce. I'm going with a lesser-known film, Multiplicity. It was a film that was very well received by people who saw it, nicely reviewed, did no business because it came out and was crushed by big summer blockbusters like Independence Day. But in it, Michael Keaton is a man who is finding he has no time for himself. His life is really taken up by his work, by his wife, by his family. No time left for him. He responds to a cryptic advertisement, gets a clone, which he sends to work so he can spend more time with the wife and kids. And then that's not working out well. I had, after Groundhog Day, it bought me a few more years of credibility in Hollywood. But I moved to Chicago 13 years ago, and my promise to my family was that I wouldn't immediately abandon them and run off to LA to make a movie. But I got a call from my agent who said, Billy Crystal's going to make a movie about a psychiatrist who starts treating a mob boss, and we'd like you to direct it. And I said, who's going to play the mob boss? And they said, well, it doesn't matter, we'll get, somebody. And I thought, I don't think so. If it was just Billy and if it read very broad, it was like a bad kind of parody of The Godfather. And I thought, no, I'll pass. And then my agent called back a week later, said, what if it was Robert De Niro? I said, all right, but I've made a promise to my family. Will Robert De Niro and Billy Crystal shoot the movie in Chicago? Next day, my agent calls back, no, they'll only do it in New York. I said, I pass. And I was like kicking myself, but I do honor my family. So they hired another director. Months went by. That director did a draft of the script. Bob hated it. So I got the call, and they said, are you ready to leave Chicago? The appropriate time had gone by. I met with De Niro. I did some very thorough research on the history of organized crime, and Italian mafia, and on the psychology of his character. I had notes on one little script card. I talked to him about four things: anxiety, guilt, rage, and grief. Yes, grief. So I rewrote the script with Peter Tolan and had a wonderful experience making this film. I don't know what it is about comedy, but so many comedians and comic filmmakers that want to be taken seriously. And when they do, it's way over the top. Maybe the people who do comedy really are angry, depressed, and really miserable. I don't know. I'm not. But the psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, who wrote the wonderful book Man's Search for Meaning, he survived the camps in World War II. And part of his analysis of psychiatry is that Freud imagined that we're driven by a will to pleasure. Everything we do is about avoiding pain and seeking pleasure. And then Adler came along and said, no, we're driven by the will to power. And Frankl tops that and says, no, it's really we're driven by the will to meaning. And that's the arc of my career. I started entertaining, in order to get laid. Okay. There it is, the will to pleasure. I wanted all the pleasures that life had to offer. And then my early films were successful, and I experienced the pleasures of money and fame, which is the will to power. Now, having been through all that without either causing any serious permanent brain damage or having really achieved any greater comfort than I had when I started, meaning is all that's really left to me. But if Kierkegaard and Sartre and Camus are right, life is unfortunately essentially meaningless. So where do you go from there? There's a character. I'll be going to Spiaggia, but but anyway, there's a character in my remake of Bedazzled, played by Brendan Fraser. He's the most erudite, sophisticated author in the world, and he says to this woman who's fascinated by him when she mentions existentialism, he says, every time I reread Camus and Sartre, I will say to myself, why does the existential dilemma have to be so damn bleak? Yes, we're alone in the universe, life is meaningless, and death is inevitable. But is that necessarily so depressing? It just puts the burden on us to fill our lives with joy and wonder and weirdness and adventure, whatever it is that makes your heart pound, your mind expand, and your spirit soar. Well, maybe we got time for one or two questions. My favorite film of mine or of anyone else's? Now, I've got 200 favorite films. I can't do favorites. Making films has been like the greatest, a tremendous opportunity and a really great pleasure for me. On my worst day as a director, it's been great. So, I mean, those are what I consider high-class problems. It's just a real privilege. And I like them all. There are things that really misfire in a lot of my films. They're not at all what I intended. But they all have great things, and I see in them what I was going for, and to some extent they're all, for me, successful in some way.
Hi. What's your fantasy project that you haven't done yet in this quest for meaning? What's next if you could do anything you wanted to do?
If I could do anything in my quest for meaning, it would be to, this sounds sappy, get through my life with a really successful marriage. We're still good, 25 years, but marriage is tough. It's where you play out all your problems are played out in that dynamic relationship with another person. Making films is easy. Being in a close, intimate relationship with someone over a long period of time, that's really tough. Someone asked the Dalai Lama, what do you do if you're married to an essentially negative person? And the Dalai Lama laughed and said, wow. He said, I'm not married. He said, with your neighbor it's easy. You say hello, you walk by, you see him a couple of times a week. He said, with someone you live with, you're on your own. All right. Sorry. Are there a couple actors or actresses that I really admire? There's so many that I admire, and we would all probably make the same list. The amazing thing to me is how much talent there is and how little really superior work happens as a result of it. Film schools churn out really good people on the technical side, great designers, great cameramen. Acting schools, wonderful actors. Writers, they're not dumb. There are a lot of really smart people writing films and television. But it's so hard to get it all together. So I always say there are more well-made films than good films. And when they are good, I just really want to celebrate those things.
Did you end up working with people like Bill Murray and that whole crew from Chicago through Second City, or from living in Chicago originally, or is that how you got connected to who are now really famous actors?
Yeah, Second City was really where we all got together. I started working in Second City in late '68 in the touring company, got on the main stage in '69, and in that early company was Brian Doyle Murray. And one day Brian said, hey, let's go up to Wilmette, my mom wants to make dinner for us. You meet my family. I went up there and he said, let's stop off and pick up my brother Bill, who's working. And Bill was running the concession stand on the 9th hole at the Wilmette Public Golf Course. He had just graduated from Loyola Academy. He was very funny. I saw him again, I think that winter, at the Treasure Island across the street from Second City on Wells Street. He was selling hot chestnuts on the street. Funniest chestnut salesman you'll ever see. And then next time I came back to Chicago, I was traveling a lot in those days. I came back and he was in the company at Second City, and already a powerful comic force and a very disruptive force. And then at that time, when I'd been working with John Belushi, John had gone off to work at the National Lampoon. John I also met at Second City, worked together there. He brought a bunch of people to New York to work at the National Lampoon. He brought Gilda Radner and Bill Murray and me and Brian and Joe Flaherty, and we became the Lampoon Company. So we all had this history going, and then Lampoon wanted to make a film. I started writing the Animal House, and that got made with Belushi, although we had written parts for Bill and also Dan Aykroyd. The studio didn't want them at that point. And then Ivan Reitman kind of brought Bill and I together in movies. First I used him in Caddyshack, and then I wrote on Meatballs, which he was in, and then we co-starred, and I co-wrote Stripes, and then the Ghostbusters, of course, and Groundhog Day. We did 6 films together. But we were kind of a comedy mafia, not unlike the Judd Apatow crowd that's working now.
You gave Bill Murray his start, basically.
Well, he gave me my start in a sense. I say this to film students all the time now. Identify the most talented person in the room, and if it's not you, go stand next to them. So, thank you very much.
That was Harold Ramis recorded live in 2009 as part of the Chicago Humanities Fall Festival on the theme of laughter. We're going to really switch gears here, so tap into that part of yourself that really loves poop jokes. Director, writer, and Baltimore native John Waters is best known for the film and subsequent Broadway musical Hairspray, and then subsequent movie musical. His 70s films Pink Flamingos and Female Trouble with drag queen Divine brought queer voices in comedy to the forefront, with a lot of filth and cashmere sweaters. He just a few months ago received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Interviewed live in 2022 by writer, musician, and filmmaker Richard Knight Jr., author of, appropriately, the book Haunted Houses, Porn Stars, and Toy Collectors, My Encounters with Remarkable Places, People, and Things, here Waters is in conversation about his debut novel, Liarmouth, a feel-bad romance.
John Waters is here in the flesh.
Thank you. Live, like that place outside the LA airport that used to say, nude live girls. That was the thing. That's nice compared to dead ones. Anyway, hi.
I thought that we should start with a trigger warning.
I never understood them either. I thought you went to college to have your values questioned.
Okay, so trigger warning. John Waters, novelist.
Thank you. Thank you.
So can you just give us a quick little synopsis of the book?
I'll give you the trailer. It's Marcia Sprinkle, suitcase thief. Her family wants her dead. She hates animals and children, hate her. She's on the run with a big chip on her shoulder. She's dangerous, she's depraved, and they call her liar mouth until one insane man makes her tell the truth. I can't help it. You know? It's a feel-bad romance.
Where did Marcia Sprinkle come from?
I don't know. I just wanted to think up somebody that would be friends with Serial Mom and Dawn Davenport and Francine Fishpaw and all the heroines of all my movies. I think she'd get along with them.
She's like Dawn Davenport's stepsister.
Yeah. I just wanted to make a character that would be totally dislikable to the rest of the world, but have the readers secretly like her. Yeah. Which is all my movies in a way.
There is another running theme throughout all of your work in the background when I hear you interviewed and read things about you. Tomorrow's Mother's Day.
Yeah, domineering Mother's Day for gay people. Freud would say that. An absent Father's Day.
And anybody who's not heard your commentary on Mommy Dearest needs to get that DVD tomorrow.
Well, I think that if they cut 2 scenes out of Mommy Dearest, she would have won the Oscar. If she hadn't had the "It's Not You, the Dirt I Hate" and the coat hanger scene, which is so over the top, the rest of it was good. But Frank Perry made that film. I mean, it is a good movie technically. Although later, I was always on Joan's side. Later, because her daughter was so serious about it and everything, and she was so abused. But later, she was at the Castro Theater with drag queens dressed as her mother doing a show. So how upset was she really?
She cashed in.
When she's
absolutely.
cashing in on it.
Sure.
No more wire hangers, come on.
So in the background, again, and you've acknowledged this several times, your own mother, took you to, see wrecked cars, let you do those crazy puppets. I mean, when you did Pink Flamingos, she was making flyers and sending them to you?
She was understanding, but horrified by the movies. My mother was serial mom more. I mean, she's the one that taught me the rules of good taste, and I'm glad she did. Because if I didn't know the rules, I couldn't have defied them.
So your mother was very supportive, and
She was horrified and supportive.
Horrified but supportive.
Yeah.
What about coming out? I mean, this
I
is
never
way-
came out. That seemed to
did
me
they
like
just
so
know,
like
or-
a bar mitzvah or something. My mother never asked if I was gay because she thought the answer would be worse. So I figured, what did they think I was, But I had girlfriends too, which confused them, and I also had straight friends that were. We hung around with all different kind of people. I still like that. I'm not a separatist. I don't get why people want to hang around with themselves. I don't want to get why people fuck people that look like themselves. I mean, otherwise Steve Buscemi and I would be married. But so she was confused. She didn't know what, because I always said gay's not enough either. It's a good start, but and the first time I ever went in a gay bar, I thought I might be queer, but I'm not this. This was so square. So she was confused, by everything. And still, at the end, with my last movie, Dirty Shame, she said, "Oh, God, what's this one about?" And I said, "Sex addicts." And she said, "Oh, maybe we'll die first." So I got my humor from her, too, I think. Yeah, my dad just said, "It was funny. I hope I'll never see it again." And my dad lent me the money for those early movies. Never saw them, and I paid him back with interest, and he was
Now that
stupefied.
is love.
Stupefied.
He gave you
Yeah,
the money
it was,
for Pink
yeah.
Flamingos.
Yeah.
Wow. So
I
you
wish
were-
he had been alive to see that the National Registry named it as a great American film this year. Even I'm appalled at that. It's really lovely. It's really nice. And Criterion's putting out this beautiful version of
Next
it coming
month,
out
the
soon.
50th
Yeah,
anniversary.
It's really great. Wait till you see the extras. We go back in the houses and tell the people that live there what happened in their house.
I mean, we've gone from this fringe person who scares the mainstream to the National Registry. You're this beloved
And I'm
figure.
the same, though.
I mean, has the culture just caught up to you?
Yeah, people's sense of humor got more twisted, and they learned that laughter is how you get people to listen. But the main thing you have to do is make fun of yourself first.
Let's get back to the book for a minute,
Okay.
because this is a huge undertaking. Your first novel.
Yeah. This took 3 years.
This is an endeavor. Can you just talk about the nuts and bolts? Do you have a favorite room, certain
Yeah, I
hours
have
of the
one room
day?
I go in every day at exactly 8 a.m. I get up at 6. I drink 5 cups of tea. I read about 100 newspapers online, and I get them delivered. I look at my emails, and then everybody knows never to call me. In the morning, I don't look at emails. I don't answer the phone. I write from about 8 to 11 every day, Monday to Friday. And in the afternoon, I think up fucked up things in the morning and sell them in the afternoon. And I've been doing that for 50 years, and I handwrite everything with Bic pens, the same kind of legal pads. I have to have Scotch tape. I cut it, and when I have a first draft, which takes a long time, my assistants can read my writing, and they type it, and then I cut that up, and it's half written. And when I turn it in, it's about sixth draft, I think. And the first draft's the hardest. You just keep going. Don't endlessly rework the first chapter. I mean, at the end of the day, read it, but the next day, just keep going. And when you're finished, you usually read the whole book and you maybe hate it, which I did, but you think, who wrote this? But it's a lot easier to rewrite the second draft than it is to write the first one. And each time you write, it gets better and better, hopefully. And if you cut something out and change it and then you put it back in, usually you're done.
Do you do an outline to start with, or
yeah.
you just?
Well, I get a deal. You know, I'm used to pitching movies and pitching books. I mean, to get a book deal, I think up the plot. Yeah, before I go to the publisher, and it gets less and less. Sometimes I can get a deal with a paragraph if it's good, but I go in and I give them the whole. First, I think of all the characters. I think of what genre I'm parodying, kind of, and then I think of the characters, and then one critic that hated me in the old days said then I think up the plot, which he called just the clothesline to hang my filthy wash, which is true. And so then I do the plot, and I always do 3 acts. I'm still like 3 acts from 16 millimeter, 30 minutes. And then I start. But it changes many, many times. This was based on a movie idea that from a long, long time ago that I really never developed. I never pitched it or anything. It was just, but Marcia did steal suitcases in airports, and she did have a boyfriend that was her fake chauffeur, that basically his salary is he could have sex with her once a year. And this was the day he was collect, but as she puts it, she's no man's used up calendar. So I had some ideas, yeah. But then other characters that were in it, sometimes I have other projects. I stole some of them for Carsick when I did the fictitious part of the rides. I imagined that were the worst rides and the best. I can, I don't let things go to waste. I don't have any old things that haven't been plucked clean of ideas that I didn't work and put into something else and developed.
You're a renowned bibliophile with over 8,000 books, and I
got more than that then. That
more,
was
probably many more since that quote. You once said, if you go home with somebody and they don't have books, don't fuck them.
Well, I have to say, though, if they're cute enough, I have violated that rule. And the other thing is, even worse, if you go home with somebody and they have books in the bathroom, don't fuck them, especially a bin of Jokes in the John and old Us magazines.
Okay, so of the 8,000 plus, some of your favorites.
Well, I think I wrote in one of my books, Role Models. I think my favorite writer, I love Denton Welsh. I love Jane Bowles. Two Serious Ladies is my favorite novel ever in the whole
Boy, they're
world.
fun.
Oh, they're hilarious. That book is so funny in parts of it. I like Ivy Compton Burnett. I love Denton Welsh really a lot. I wrote the introduction to Tennessee Williams' memoirs when it was re-released. He gave me the freedom to get out of suburbia and know what Bohemia was and everything. So he was a huge influence on me. Edward Albee, The Theater of the Ridiculous, Jean Genet. Oh, God. I used to read him in Catholic school, and they were so dumb they didn't know. They thought, he's reading good. If they only knew Our Lady of the Flowers was not what they were teaching us, right? Grove Press saved my life, right? So I always read books that were, I don't know, I read William Burroughs, Genet, all the beats.
Who called you the Pope of
William Burroughs
trash?
called me the Pope of Trash. I was being anointed from God above, right?
Totally.
And I even opened for William one night. We spoke together because he was very smartly reinvented for the punk world by James Grauerholz, his friend. And he gave readings in all the punk clubs and stuff. And I went to William's house before, and I sneaked and looked in his bedroom, and he had a single cot, and he was reading the paperback version of the Guyana Massacre, and he served warm vodka in an empty peanut butter jar. It was great. It was so great. Loved him, and this is a parody of many things. It's a parody of noir, definitely, in some ways. It's a parody of narrative. Not so much stuff happens in 4 days that all characters would drop dead. It's ridiculous how much could happen. I love ridiculous alliteration I use. I love to have ludicrous sex writing. I have parody, I think, experimental writing, where I just talk to the reader suddenly for no reason in the middle of the book. So I'm trying to parody the very idea of writing a novel in the first place. And but I still want it to just sound like I'm telling you a story. Even though to make it sound like that, you have to rewrite and get it raw. I know
to
from
do the
Broadway,
work.
one thing I really learned from doing Hairspray on Broadway, something I had never done, and I didn't produce it or write it, but I was there constantly like a studio executive, so I saw the endless fiddling they do with it before it's, quote, frozen, before it opens. And you can get not one laugh, and they change the pause or two words, and the whole house is roaring. It's amazing to see how close it can be about timing and the way you say something and the way you do it. And, you know, I'm trying to make fun of political correctness, but at the same way, I went through the book with my editor, my agent, the 3 generations of women that work for me to say, what can you do today with humor on the edge? It's easy to be offensive, but I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to make fun of the rules that I live in, that you all live in, that my audience lives in.
I mean, this humor, which makes the transgressive go down easier, there's also always this very deep affection. You love these people.
I do. Even the most damaged people I find appealing, and I try to. That's why I don't like people that judge other people. So I'm just asking you not to judge people till you know the whole story. And sometimes I'm trying to give you the whole story. It's ludicrously so terrible. But at the same time, I'm trying to make you laugh at things that you might fear or what is terrible. Sometimes if it's not real, you can laugh with it, hopefully. I'm always asking you to laugh with my characters, not at them, I don't think. That's a big difference.
Which is probably one reason why everybody, you know, on the outside, as I said, I really, you said once to RuPaul, you know, even among minorities, you're minorities, you said this earlier, I really do think of you as the outsider's outsider. And certainly in the climate we're in now, you know, you're like this huge hero to have lived your whole life in the early 70s. You're like this.
I'm not in
gay
my early
icon.
70s. I'm in my
no,
late 70s.
No, I'm talking about the 1970s when peak
Oh,
Mingles
yeah,
and-
okay.
No.
I'm 76. That's middle aged. I'm
I
not going
was
to be
gonna
152.
say,
Old chickens make good soup.
Absolutely.
But,
Okay.
But still, it's amazing to me. I agree that kids come up to me, you know, and they're so amazing. They weren't even born when I made some of these movies. And my movies keep getting put out, and they're never rediscovered. They're not hard to see. Multiple Maniacs was on HBO Plus. How could that possibly be?
How could that be?
You know, I don't know myself, and I think Criterion, really, I gave a great salute to them that put the class back in the art business, because they celebrate all kinds of movies. Well, not all kinds. They celebrate both ends. Nothing in the middle, right? The very arty and the very trashy, but the ones that are so trashy, they're so extreme.
Okay, so talking just for a moment about movies, it's been over 15 years since The Dirty Shame, since you've made a movie, which is
Yeah.
a fucking dirty shame.
Well, I've been paid to write 3 other ones that never came out that were a sequel to Hairspray, 3 different kinds for Hollywood. They paid me very well, and I did it. They never came out. And I have another one that I was paid to do called Fruitcake, which is a children's Christmas movie. That might happen. Who knows? I can't say anything about it. It's just I can't. So who knows? Might. And so it's not that I haven't been active in Hollywood. They've paid me to do things, and Hollywood treated me fairly. I don't have any complaints about it. They treated me fairly. One thing you should know, if you don't want them to tell you what to do, then make your film on a cell phone camera. If you want a house, you listen to what they have to say. That's how it works.
Well, we can, there's a sliver of hope that perhaps we'll do that. We have a couple of audience questions, and then we're going to open this up to some other questions. Okay, this is from Ty Aramondo. Hello, John. I'm a huge fan of yours and an aspiring 17-year-old filmmaker that wants to make the same shocking, bizarre, quote-unquote trash cinema that you have perfected. Anyways, my question, although quite cliche, is what advice would you give to young filmmakers like me who want to be unique and stand out among the thousands of films being made? Thanks.
Well, the advice would be to do what you want to do is not imitate me. You have to do something that would surprise me, that would come out. And I always said to get an NC-17 rating with no sex or violence. What could that be? That's the key to the next shocker. Ideas that are so perverse that that parents are just nervous of you thinking about them. What a great movie that would be. And also to tell all young people, a no is free. Don't fear rejection ever. It's like hitchhiking. You need one person to say yes to back a movie. Don't borrow money from people if you really don't think you can pay them back. It's not a grant, you know.
This is from Anonymous. What is your favorite memory of Divine?
My favorite memory of Divine would not be when we were filming. My favorite memory of Divine would be at Christmas, which he really loved. And I don't know, just being with him. He was a great host. He loved to cook. He loved to have friends over. He was the opposite kind of the Divine image that you think of this scary person. Divine in high school got hassled constantly, and later he used that rage to become the character. But once he established that, when he got the best reviews is when he played the opposite, when he played a loving mother or a drunken housewife or something. So my favorite memories of Divine would be at Christmas, and I remember the last time I ever saw him. Hairspray had opened. It was a hit. He got a great review with Pauline Kael. He got all great reviews, and we had dinner at Odeon in New York, just the two of us. And we sat at that last table. We were glowing. It was great success. It just happened a week earlier. I kissed him goodbye. He got in a limo, which I'm sure he didn't pay for. And he dropped dead the next week. So it was a great last night. But and today, you know, the graveyard he's in has many, many visitors, and so I'm going to be buried there. We're all being buried there. Mink Stoll, so we call it Disgrace Land. So it's a whole
Pat Moran.
It's a whole Pat Moran, Mink Stoll, Dennis Derby, a lot of us. We're all going to be buried there. So and I like the idea of being buried with your friends, with your studio. You know, not that many. No one does that. I don't know anyone that's buried with their friends. Do you?
That was John Waters with Richard Knight Jr. recorded live at the University of Illinois, Chicago in spring 2022. Head to the show notes at chicagohumanities.org for the links to the full videos of both this program and Harold Ramis, whose full video has film clips of all of his favorite comedy moments, as well as the link to check out John Waters' book and some other fun photos and resources. Chicago Humanities Tapes is produced and hosted by me, Elisa Rosenthal, with help from the awesome staff over at Chicago Humanities. Shout out to the wonderful team who are programming these live events and making them sound super crisp. For more than 30 years, Chicago Humanities has created experiences through culture, creativity, and connection. Check out chicagohumanities.org for more information on becoming a member, so you'll be the first to know about upcoming events and other insider perks. You can also check out our backlog of episodes from Season 1 of Chicago Humanities Tapes, available wherever you stream your podcasts. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a brand new episode for you. But in the meantime, stay human.